When placed, you may... Oh right, yeah, we don't do that anymore. Hello and welcome everyone to today's set breakdown, actually. I was gonna include this together with the V-TD01 stuff, but I decided that it's probably better to keep that on its own, and there's quite a lot of good cards in these trial decks, which, by the way, you get away with buying just one and having pretty much 4 of every important card. But so this is the first 2 trial decks of the reboot, or well, the first cards of the reboot really, which are Trial Deck 01 Aichi Sendou and Trial Deck 02 Toshiki. For those of you that are new or returning players, the way that my set breakdown works is that usually on the day of set release, or slightly after if I'm too busy, I tend to have a video in which I go over all the important cards in a certain set usually, but now I also might do trial decks. I think this time I'm doing it because there's 2, but when the Leon one comes out I might just do it together with the extra booster. I'll see how I treat that, but normally I just go over all the important cards, we go over the skills, whether they're good or not, whether they'll be good and competitive or not, and stuff like that, so it's a good way for you to catch up on all the cards as well as see what's actually good. We're gonna go over IG stuff first. There's a few changes in terms of the way that the syntax works in cards now. The way that effects are written are different, and it's going to take some time to get used to, but overall I think it shouldn't be too big of an issue. So we're going to begin with Royals, so this is going to be Aichi's trial deck. First card of which is Alfred Early. He has one single skill. When he's placed on Vanguard Circle, cost Counterblast 1, call up to 1 Blaster Blade from your hand or soul to Rearguard Circle, and it gets plus 10k until end of turn, if you call to draw a card. This does hold the Force marker as well, as Royal Paladin is a Force clan, and it's overall a pretty good skill because you get yourself a Blaster Blade on the field. If it's in your soul, that's already a +1. He also gets a plus 10k, and you draw a card, which is an additional +1. For new players that are or returning players, what it's meant by +1 is a plus in card advantage. So because you draw a card, it's an additional card in your hand, so it's a +1 in your hand, etc. Same with the soul, like if you call something from your soul, it's technically a +1 because you got another card on your field without using up resources in your hand. So again, pretty good. So Alfred Early is a pretty good card. He does have 13k base power, which is going to be different for the, current players as we're used to in G. There was 11k most of the time, but yeah, that's basically it for this guy. Then the other grade 3 in the trial deck is Star Drive Dragon, which is a different skill than the one that you get in the Caravan deck. So on Rearguard Circle, when he attacks a Vanguard, if you have 3 or more Rearguards, he gets plus 5k until end of that battle, so he'll be an 18k attacker pretty consistently, which is also nice, and he does hold Force, so if you do have to ride him, you still get the Force off as well. And while we're still talking about grade 3s, if you're not aware of what imaginary gifts are, essentially when you ride the grade 3 that possesses that marker, you can take one of the imaginary gift markers from your pile that's normally above your damage zone and put one of those imaginary gifts in the specified place. So for example, for Force, when you acquire it, you have to put it on your Vanguard Circle or your Rearguard Circle, and the unit on that circle will get plus 10k power on your turn. And you can also stack those imaginary gift markers, but only for Force. So for Force you can stack them. There's 2 more which are Protect and Axle, but those aren't in these trial decks, so you only really need to know how Force works. Moving along, we have the 10k vanilla Knight of Silence Gallatin. What is meant by vanillas here is that they don't have a skill, but they do have 10k power, and this one also has 10k shield, which is not normal for grade 2s, actually, even in the reboot, so that is something else. Then we have the cover card for this trial deck, which is Blaster Blade, which comes in 2 different arts. I've unfortunately been told that the English printing doesn't look all that great in person, and apparently the card thickness in English has decreased by 1/3 or so, which is quite unfortunate because apparently the printing office, or the printing place where English cards are printed, went from Singapore to Malaysia, and thus the card quality actually decreased, which is quite unfortunate. But regardless, let's go over Blaster Blade's 2 skills. First, it's a continuous skill. On Vanguard Circle, if you have 4 or more rearguards, he gets an extra critical. Now this skill is a double-edged sword in my opinion, because the extra critical is nice because you push your opponent for more damage early on. However, you also give them more counterblast, so some decks that need more counterblast to do their combos will be happy to take that extra crit, and you also have to commit your board quite hard because you have to be able to call another 4 units on top of riding, which that early in the game is actually quite dangerous because if your opponent takes out all of your rear guards, you're going to be left with nothing, and it's going to be kind of hard to recuperate that lost damage if you don't have enough counterblast to make the combos. It's a bit of a double-edged sword. Be careful when you use that first skill because sometimes overcommitting might actually lead to being punished. His second skill is a Vanguard and Rearguard Circle. When placed, Counterblast 1, Soul Blast 1. You choose one of your opponent's rearguards in the front row and retire it. So specifically in the front row, and the cost isn't that steep either. It's not the 2 Counterblast that it used to be, but the Soul Blast can hurt in the long run when we're taking a look at what the deck is supposed to look like after VBT01, but for these trial decks on their own, it's actually a pretty good skill, so I think it's quite alright. And as for the distribution, the first card that you see you get 1 copy of, and the other arts you get 3 copies of, but you still get 4 in total. Next we have Sage of the Arts Jaren. For those of you that saw the deck preview, we do play this card as a 3 of. His skill is, when he attacks a Vanguard, if you have 3 or more rearguards, he gets plus 5k until the end of that battle. So it's actually the same as Star Drive Dragon, but it's on grade 2, which is actually better. Then we have our grade 1 Wingle. He has a rearguard skill that's continuous. During your turn, all of your Blaster Blade in the same column as this unit get plus 5k power. And he has an 8k, so in total they'll be hitting for at least 23k with the Blaster Blade, which is definitely very nice and doesn't cost any counterblast. Next is a pretty nice grade 1, which is Knight Squire Allen. When he's placed on Rearguard Circle, cost counterblast 1, call up to 1 card with grade less than or equal to your Vanguard from your hand to Rearguard Circle. If you called, you draw a card and this unit gets plus 3k power until end of turn. I think this card's pretty good because it allows you to call something from hand, but it's not just as if you're losing a card from hand, you still get to draw something to make up for calling something from hand, but it's quite nice because it does give you the selection of something that you have in hand, so it's overall quite nice. Royal Paladin at the moment does not have anything to call in the middle of the battle phase, but once they do, this card might actually get better. And the plus 3k is also nice because you have an 11k booster that with anything that attacks for 12k or more will be hitting for nice numbers as well. Next, nowadays you get 4 perfect shields in a trial deck and they're also 7k power. However, they are grade 1, but it's still very nice that just with 1 trial deck you do get 4 perfect shields, which is something that us old players would have never imagined. Next is the last grade 1, which is Auspice Falcon or Auspice. Act on Rearguard Circle, counterblast 1 and rest him, and 2 of your rearguards get plus 5000 power until end of turn. So as you may have noticed, all grade 1s now do have 10k shield except for that of Perfect Guards, which is really cool. Auspice Falcon on his own though is not very good. He's 6k power, which is a lot less than the other grade 1s, and his skill isn't all that great to warrant running him, and I think there are better choices instead. And finally we have the starter, and this skill is, when rode upon, draw a card. So the term is now rode. I used to always say ridden, but I guess it is rode. And all starters, all grade 0s that you start the game with, now have the same skill, at least for now, where like when you ride on top of them, you draw a card, so that is it. The only other cards in this trial deck are the triggers, which you get 8 of the criticals, 4 of the draws, and 4 of the heals. And don't forget that their shield values are changed, in which criticals now have 15k shield and heals have 20k shield. And their trigger power also gives plus 10k power instead of the old plus 5. And that's actually it for the Royal Paladin one. I think it's a pretty good trial deck on its own. It's really good, I think, when you start first because you're able to get yourself a force, and with Alfred early you get an extra unit and an extra card in hand if you get the combo off, which is really nice. And also pressuring with Blaster Blade when you're starting is a bit better if you're actually going to commit for that extra critical skill. Overall, quite a few cards from this trial deck also stay in the main competitive deck, like Blaster Blade, Jaren, potentially Allen and Wingle if you want to, as well as obviously Gleim. But that is actually it for the Royal Paladin side. Moving right along, we have the Kagero side, beginning with Dragonic Overlord, which also has 2 different arts. First one of which comes once in the trial deck, and the other one comes 3 times, so you still get 4 of the card itself. And also do keep in mind that Kagero is a forest clan, so you will be getting 3 forest markers in your trial decks as well. If you feel like 3 isn't enough, don't forget that when VBT01 comes out, Unite Team Q4, every box does come with 1 of each imaginary gift marker, so you will be able to get some more in that way. But anyway, let's go over Overlord. I'm slightly disappointed that the once per turn on the second skill is slightly misplaced, or like the placing of the skill just seems a bit different when I'm zooming past them, but that, you know, let's just not notice that for now. Dragonic Overlord's first skill is Vanguard and Rearguard Circle Act. Once per turn, Soul Blast 1, and this unit gets plus 10k power until end of turn. It's quite nice that it's both on Vanguard and Rearguard Circles because you can make him a pretty threatening attacker for 23k, but also on Vanguard Circle this will be 23k on its own, with the Force 33, if you ride him again 43, so it's definitely quite threatening because that goes straight into his second skill, which is Vanguard Circle once per turn. When its attack hits, counterblast 1 and discard 2 cards from your hand, stand this unit and it gets drive -1 until end of turn. This is a pretty scary skill because you don't actually have to hit the Vanguard as shown in the anime, you can also hit rear guards and still be able to restand, and if you check a few crits, it's definitely going to be quite scary. So Overlord in itself is a really strong boss card. I think it's stronger than Alfred Early itself, but Royal Paladin does get a stronger one in VBT01 itself, whereas Overlord sticks as the main staple for Kagero. Next we have Crested Dragon, another one of the sort of caravan deck cards. So his skill is similar to Star Drive Dragon. When he attacks a Vanguard specifically, if your opponent has 3 or less rear guards, this unit gets +5k until end of that battle. So 18k attacker with a slightly bigger restriction this time because you do have to keep your opponent from calling that many units. However, he does have Force, which is pretty nice in case you do ride into him. Next is the Grade 2 Dragon Armored Knight. When it attacks a Vanguard, if your one has 3 or less rear guards, he gets +5k until end of that battle. So once again, the same skill as Crested Dragon, but on a Grade 2. Next we have one of the best Grade 2s in the trial deck, or well, the best Grade 2 in the trial deck in my opinion, which is Dragon Knight Nahalem. When called, counterblast 1, choose one of your opponent's rear guards in the back row, retire it, and this unit gets +5k power until end of turn. Really nice because it can get rid of those pesky grade 1s in the back row, which is always nice to have that option. So he's overall quite good, only costs counterblast 1 and does build up a bit of power as well, so I think it's overall quite nice. But it's only when he's called, so you'll only be able to use it in that instance. Next is also the 10k vanilla for Kagero, which is Lam, and he does have 10k shield as well. Then we have the Perfect Guard for Kagero, which is Guard Griffin, again 4 times in the trial deck. Then there's Dragon Monk Gojo. When it boosts, if you have more rear guards than your opponent, the boosted unit gets +3k until end of turn. Essentially an 11k booster, which isn't too bad, but I think he will be quite easily replaced in the actual long run. Next is a really good grade 1 for Kagero in this trial deck, which is Embodiment of Armor Bar. When called, counterblast 1 and soulblast 1, choose one of your opponent's grade 2 or less rear guards in the same column as this unit, retire it, and if you have more rear guards than your opponent, this unit gets +5k power until end of turn. This is quite nice because you can call it in any column to retire something that's grade 2 or less, which is usually going to be either a front or a back row. You can call it behind the Vanguard to get rid of their booster, you can call it on any other column to get rid of literally anything that's not grade 3, so it's overall really nice and it builds up power too, so I think there's definitely a 4 of in the long run for Kagero and it's a very good card. Next is Dragonite Burge. He's 6k power and has an active rearguard skill. If your opponent has 4 more rearguards, counterblast 1 and put him into your soul, choose one of your opponent's rearguards and retire it, and one of your rearguards gets +10k until end of turn. I think this card for now isn't all that amazing because not that many clans can withhold with 4 more rearguards. I think maybe in the long run it'll be a bit more threatening, but right now it's still an alright card because when Royals overcommit, for example, you can easily punish them with this guy, and you get yourself an extra soul, which is actually quite important because Overlord likes to soul blast to get that extra +10k, and you also soul blast for bar as well. So I think the extra soul is definitely quite welcome. And finally we have this starter, which is Lizard Runner Undo. When rode upon, draw a card. Same skill as previously mentioned. And once again, the triggers, as I mentioned, are 8 criticals, 4 draws, and 4 heals in this trial deck. So that's actually it for the cards. I think that the ones that are going to stay in the competitive form of Kagero are going to be Overlord, Nahalem for sure, Dragon Armored Knight maybe. Some people also play Lam, so it's definitely an option. I think Bar is definitely staying, and Burge might come in a bit later, and obviously Undo and the triggers, of course, as well. So what's really nice is that a lot of the cards in the trial decks this time do actually stick around for the competitive decks, which is really cool. And the trial decks themselves are really nice. The fact that you only need to buy one to have everything is really cool, and I think it's a very smart move by Bushro to get people into the game quite easily. So what do you think? Are you getting back into the game just now, or did you just find the game itself? I hope you do give it a try, and don't forget to spread the game in your local communities, get people to pick up the trial deck, get them to try out the game and see if they like it, and then if they do, there's only 2 weeks left until VBT01 at the time of recording this, so you'll be able to enhance these decks as well as build new ones as time goes on. But that's gonna be it for me today. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do want some more competitive help in updating these decks, you can check out my deck previews, in which I already went over 3 of the clans in VBT01. I'll be going over Kagero next, and then I'll be doing budget decks for each of the clans as well. And for Kagero and Royals, it's very much just enhancing the trial decks with some of the other cards in VBT01, and that's about it. So, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Don't forget to click the bell button as well as check out the social medias in the description, as well as join the Discord channel if you haven't already. But on that note, that's gonna be it for me today. I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.